Today is January 14th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. I am Rob, I'm an alcoholic, and it is a thrill to be with you here today as we journey on through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 and 12. Today we're going to be jumping into, actually wrapping up Chapter 3 of More About Alcoholism and beginning Chapter 4, We Agnostics. So we're going to be covering pages 42 through 47. And then in the 12 and 12, we are going to be wrapping up Step 2. So that would be pages 30 and 31. I believe that's the end of Step 2 here. We'll find out when we get there. So just to recap what we read yesterday in the Big Book, we learned about a couple of different illustrations of the insanity of the true alcoholic, at least as some examples and analogies here to kind of better understand how cunning and baffling and powerful this disease is. So first, they compare the alcoholic to the jaywalker, right? The one who jumps in front of the cars and injures themselves constantly, even though he vows he'll never do it again. It becomes a matter of life and death. And then we also get an illustration from a friend of the fellowship named Fred, who shares his story. And Fred, one of the things that jumped out to me is on page 41, and it's in italics. And this is Fred's testimony here. He goes, "Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all." And actually on the same page just before that, "As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to my mind that it'd be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all. Nothing more." So we left off, and poor Fred is in pretty bad shape. Literally the last lines we read yesterday were, "I'd never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. But I knew then, and it was a crushing blow." So we kind of ended on a dark note, but thankfully, guys, this book is all about hope. We're going to find out that this isn't the end of Fred's story. So that's where we're going to begin today on page 42, and we'll jump right into it. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic, and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had only been a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant that I'd have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window, and that was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying, and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst that I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had only felt the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made a statement to some of us. "What you say about general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men, whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless, apart from divine help. Had you offered yourself as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you, if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. his defense must come from a higher power. And that leads perfectly into Chapter 4, We Agnostics. This is page 44. We're going to be reading 44 through 47. Chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope that we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find that you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount that you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. To one who feels he is an atheist or an agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. But it isn't so difficult. About half of our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope that we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought that we were atheists or agnostic. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies didn't save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all of our might. But the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be so as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. Some of us have been violently anti-religious, and to others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We have found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Much to our relief, we discovered that we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek Him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive. never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you will find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this is all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. All right, a lot of great stuff in that, guys. We'll return to that in just a minute. All right, guys, so we're going to jump into the 12 and 12 now. I do apologize. I said we were wrapping up step 2. That is incorrect. We'll be wrapping that up tomorrow. So we're on pages 30 and 31 today, and then tomorrow we'll wrap it up. With all that said, let's get to the book. Page 30. Another crowd of AA says, we were plumb disgusted with religion and all of its works. The Bible, we said, was full of nonsense. We could cite it chapter and verse, and we couldn't see the Beatitudes for the begats. In spots, its morality was impossibly good. In others, it seemed impossibly bad. But it was the morality of the religionists themselves that really got us down. We gloated over the hypocrisy, bigotry, and crushing self-righteousness that clung to so many believers, even in their Sunday best. This all meant, of course, that we had substituted negative for positive thinking. After we came to AA, we had to recognize that this trait had been an ego-feeding proposition. In belaboring the sins of some of the religious people, we could feel superior to them all. Moreover, we could avoid looking at some of our own shortcomings. Self-righteousness, the very thing that we had contemptuously condemned in others, was our own besetting evil. This phony form of respectability was our undoing, so far as faith was concerned. More often, though, we had met up with some major calamity, and to our way of thinking, lost out because God deserted us. The girl we wanted to marry had other notions. We prayed that God would change her mind, but she didn't. We prayed for healthy children, and we were presented with sick ones, or none at all. We prayed for promotions at business, and none came. Loved ones upon whom we hardly depended were taken from us. Then we became drunkards, and asked God to stop that. But nothing happened. This was the unkindest cut of all. Damn this faith business, we said. When we encountered AA, the fallacy of our defiance was revealed. At no time had we asked what God's will was for us. Instead, we'd been telling Him what it ought to be. No man we saw could believe in God and defy Him too. Belief meant reliance, not defiance. In AA, we saw the fruits of this belief, men and women spared from alcohol's final catastrophe. We saw them meet and transcend their other pains and trials. We saw them calmly accept impossible situations, seeking neither to run nor to recriminate. This was not only faith, it was faith that worked under all conditions. We soon concluded that whatever price and humility we must pay, we would pay. All right, everybody, there's a lot in that, a lot of great stuff. So first of all, I think it's pretty interesting. I've definitely been guilty of judging the judgy, or the hypocrites, and this book really nails me to the T because I was being a hypocrite as well by judging others. So that was definitely an eye opener, and it's a great reminder today about that. And going back to the big book real quickly, one thing I've loved in We Agnostics, it says right here on page 45, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your, it doesn't say alcohol problem. It just says problem. So by this point, maybe the steps can help in other ways, not just the alcohol problem. Maybe the alcohol is a symptom of a deeper rooted issue. And then I love the last part of Fred's testimony here. So a few pages before that, I love this part here on page 43. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst that I have now. And buddy, I love that. And I could not relate more to that. Not all the times I had in the past, while I was drinking, not all of them, those times were bad. But the peace that I have now in sobriety, even during the hard times, that does not mean life got any easier. It certainly hasn't. In a lot of ways, it's gotten harder. But my relationship through my higher power and my sobriety, I would take the hardest day in sobriety over the best day of my drinking any day of the week. So guys, I hope you all have a great day today. Stay tuned as we will be journeying through some more of We Agnostics and finishing up step 2 in the 12 and 12. And as I always say, it really is an honor to be here and a thrill to be here. I'm growing a lot just reading through the big book, one page at a time, one day at a time. It really has helped me. And I hope that it has helped at least one other person out there as well, whoever you are. That's it for me, guys. I've rambled on enough. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.